You are listening to Season 2, Episode 99, Cubs Prospect Party with Northside Bound. Don't forget to listen, download, review, and most importantly, subscribe to the podcast. Follow us on the socials, Fly the W670 on Twitter, Instagram, also on Facebook, or email us, flythew670@gmail.com. Crawly, happy Christmas. Hope you're enjoying the season.
Yeah, it's not a white Christmas. I mean, whenever you have a 55-degree Christmas in Chicago, you'll take it. But hey, you know what? Hopefully, it's been a fun year, I think. And, the holidays, we're very, very thankful for everything. But hopefully now we got some movement happening and hopefully free agents will start coming off the board here.
Yeah, curious to know what Jed and Carter are up to at the moment. But we know, Crawly, the big news since we were last podcasting, we know who's not coming to the Cubs.
Yep, Yoshinobu Yamamoto. My heart broke. I had a feeling as this was leaning more away towards LA or New York. But he was the guy I wanted more than anybody, and he got paid, Dustin. 12 years, $325 million contract. Plus, the Dodgers have to pay the $50 million posting fee for him. Unlike the Shohei Ohtani deal, there is no deferrals. Now, there are opt-outs after year 6 and year 8. The deal's more backloaded, so more of the higher payment comes towards the end. So if he opts out, he leaves the higher salaries. So we'll see what happened. But Dustin, this blew my mind. According to Odyssey insider Bob Nightingale, the Dodgers have spent more than $1.1 billion with a B with the signings of Yamamoto, Ohtani, and Tyler Glasnow. The other 29 MLB teams have spent less than $900 million combined.
Yeah, that's a wild number. That is an absolutely wild number that combined, it's less than what the Dodgers have done.
I mean, like I said, whether this is good for the game or not remains to be seen. You know that some of the highest paid teams last year bombed out. When you talk about obviously teams like the Padres and the Mets and stuff like that, it doesn't guarantee anything. But boy, this team just looks, they got the pitching, they got hitting, they got defense. I just don't know where the weaknesses are, but that's why you play the games, right?
That's why you play the games. Let's hope that Jed was right, that sometimes winning the offseason can be a curse.
Yeah, there was one more signing of note. The Padres got legendary Japanese left-handed closer Yuki Matsui. He agreed to a 5-year, $28 million contract. It includes an opt-out for the 3rd and 4th year, but the Cubs weren't going to spend that for a closer, I don't think, unless it would maybe – I still don't think they're even going to do Josh Hader. But if we take a look at the tiered board that we had up here, you can see now Yamamoto is now scratched out. So it's, no Ohtani, no Yamamoto. Snell is left on the board. I heard some rumblings. I don't know why the LA Angels would target him, but oh well. Trade targets, Cease and Alonso, maybe. Especially with Yamamoto not going to New York. That really hurts them, They were really looking to get that guy, and so we'll see if they want to keep Pete or not. Tier 2 free agents, Jordan Montgomery, Matt Chapman, Cody Bellinger still on the board. Tier 2 trade markets, Corbin Burns and Alex Bregman still out there. Tyler Glasnow is off. Tier 3 free agents, Rhys Hoskins, Jorge Soler, Shota Imanaga. And then the Tier 3 trade targets, we got Shane Bieber and Hassam Kim and Isaac Paredes. But here's the thing, Dustin. All roads lead to Scott Boras. As our friend John Becker from Fangraphs, friend of the pod, he points out that the top 4 remaining free agents are all Scott Boras clients, as well as 6 of the top 12 free agents left. So Scott Boras sitting pretty in the cat seat like he normally does. These are what Fangraphs and John Becker have rated as the top 12 left. Cody Bellinger, Blake Snell, Jordan Montgomery, and Matt Chapman, all on our tiered list. All are Scott Boras clients. And then you have Josh Hader, Marcus Stroman, Shohei Imanaga, Teoscar Hernandez. Then Rhys Hoskins is a Boras client.
Another Boras guy, right? Yep.
Lucas Giolito, Jorge Soler, and then JD Martinez wraps out the top 12. He's also a Boras client. So, I mean, the only DH outfielder that I see on this list, you have Teoscar Hernandez and Jorge Soler are available. And then for, starters, I mean, I think we've established the Cubs don't want to go back with Marcus Stroman and Lucas Giolito still out there. I don't know what you want to pay for him. But this is where things kind of start getting nervous, because if you are a team like the Yankees or the Mets, maybe even the Phillies. I mean, and obviously Cubs, Toronto, these are all teams that are now, the pool has gotten smaller. And all of these are Boris clients. So all he's going to do is just go back and forth until he gets the best deal for his client. And that's why Scott Boras is the best at what he does.
Right. You're going to have to work with him. I mean, the Cubs have to get what at least one of these guys, right? I mean, you got to get one of these guys off this list. Now, half of them are Boris guys, half of them are. I don't see Marcus Stroman and the Cubs getting back together. That wouldn't make much sense at this point, unless nobody else wanted Stroman. So I don't see that happening. What do you think? If you get two of those names, Crawly, would you be happy at this point?
You have to get two of these names. It has to be a pitcher and it has to be a hitter. I would say almost close to three of these. I mean, if you really want to be playing it safe, you got a third baseman on here in Chapman. I don't know if they want to sign him to a long-term deal. Obviously, we've talked about Cody Bellinger plenty. He can play center. He can play first. Blake Snell, I mean, I've been surprised at how people haven't been going after him like crazy. I mean, I know Yamamoto's the young guy and stuff like that, but I mean, how rare is it that the reigning Cy Young Award winner doesn't seem like he's drawing like a ton of interest? Have you kind of noticed that?
Yep. It's very interesting.
I hear more talk about Imanaga than I do about Snell.
Yep.
And then,
Snell's got age going against him, right? He's got Boris, depending on how you look at it, Boris going against him. So there's a couple of check marks against him.
And again, I'm just kind of looking, Jordan Montgomery is another guy. So the Cubs, though, we talked about this last time, is they don't have, they have to replace Stroman's numbers pitching wise. They have to replace Bellinger's numbers hitting wise. And even with those two guys, that wasn't enough to get to the playoffs. It wasn't enough to get to the division, to win the division. So they have to do more. And so, again, Boris holds all the cards right now. So we'll kind of see who's desperate. And this is where these overpays, really, it gets frustrating when you got to do that, but that's why you want to do it. And that's why Scott Boras, you're like, well, why isn't Jed doing anything? Because he doesn't have to, or because Scott Boras doesn't have to. He can sit back and let the market come to him. And so now that you have all these guys off the boards here, now with him controlling, again, 6 of the top 12 free agents left, he could just sit there and teams get desperate and then they overpay. And that's what Boras is counting on. And that's what Jed doesn't really have the stomach for, I don't think. We'll see what happens.
You are listening to Season 2, Episode 98. And it's Episode 99, rather. And this is Cub Prospect Party with Northside Bound. Don't forget to listen, download, review, and subscribe to the Fly the W podcast. Don't forget to leave those 5-star reviews. And in this segment, Crawly hosted a live crossover with Greg Huss, Rich Biesterfeld, Todd Johnson from Northside Bound to go over their top 50 Cub prospect list. Take a listen.
Welcome, Cub fans. We are live, a live edition of the Fly the W crossover special edition with my guys from Northside Bound. I have with us right now Todd Johnson, Greg Huss, and Rich Biesterfeld. Look at him coming in right on cue, like perfect. Guys, how are we doing this offseason? It has been, needless to say, a little bit underwhelming for some Cub fans right now.
Yeah, a little underwhelming for Cubs fans. I guess it's a good time to be a prospect follower, right?
Yeah, seems to be a season of hurry up and wait.
We're learning patience.
But guys, part of the reason I wanted to have you on, obviously, you guys are the prospect experts. You just had your lists out on Northside Bound. And as we kind of sit here and we're kind of waiting for things to happen, trying to poke Jed Hoyer with a stick, we've kind of noticed, there's different ways to make the team better. Number one, you can buy players through free agency. We saw Shohei Ohtani's record-breaking deal. You can trade players, which involves trading prospects, or you can have people get to, put people in that are within your system and find spots for them on the major league roster. So this is a time where you kind of get a little bit, especially I'm sure for you three guys, as guys that have followed all these players' careers closely, it's almost like, oh my gosh, are we going to trade somebody? If a Juan Soto comes out, are you willing to give up 3 or 4 players to get a guy like that? And that gets tough. Greg, do me a little bit a favor and tell me, when it comes to prospects, is there a problem sometimes of fans like ourselves here, especially us 4 here, but getting a little bit too attached to prospects?
Yeah, I think that you're always going to have one extreme or the other, I feel like, with everything. And I feel like the two extremes are that every prospect can be traded and it should be traded and needs to be traded right now. And then the other side of the spectrum is trying to hold on and hug every single prospect that the Cubs have, and nobody should be traded. You shouldn't trade a guy like Alexander Canario for someone like Juan Soto, So I think you have both ends of the spectrum. I think that we try our very, very best to be the middle ground. It's tough. I mean, because the thing is, like, with what we're doing, with Todd, Rich, and I are doing, it's like we're watching a lot of these prospects, and so like we become attached to like enjoying watching them play the game and their stories and all that good stuff, and so it becomes a little bit extra for us to root for these players as they come up and eventually reach the major leagues.
Now, Rich, I have my ticket set for Arizona. I am excited. I'm actually going to be there St. Patrick's Day, the week of St. Patrick's Day. And Stu and I are going to be there at the same time. So that's going to be fun. But I want your opinion on this new initiative MLB has, Spring Breakout 24. I know you're going to be there. I know you're going to be shooting the pictures. How excited are you to see this?
It should be fun. I think one of the concerns I heard when it was first announced is this a way that they might be phasing out the AFL, the Arizona Fall League? So I'm hoping that's not the case. But yeah, it should be fun seeing a team of all, Cubs top prospects. I mean, for you or me, I know we hang out on the backfields a lot during spring training. For people who don't do that, it's going to be kind of different. But I think for us, it's not going to be all that much different because most of these guys, you've watched their minor league game on those backfields or seen them during the workout. So, but it's a good chance for exposure, I think, to some of the fans who don't ever make it back there, to be able to get to see like, Pete Crow Armstrong, Cade Horton, guys like that, James Triantos, names they've maybe heard but haven't watched if they're not a subscriber to the MILB channels.
Now, Todd, you guys have, you do this where you at Northside Bound, you come up with a list. Tell our listeners, when you guys all sat down and decide to come up with these lists, do you guys have any parameters, or how do you approach your list when you get to making it?
I think most of them have kind of organically gone to tiers lately, where we have like groups of players. That's kind of where we're at in analyzing prospects. And it kind of seems weird, but you have a group that sets itself apart at the top, and then another group that could be anywhere from 4 to 7 is where I did mine, and Greg had maybe 1 to 4. But yeah, we've kind of set them into tiers where we think they have more. This tier has more value than this tier, or this tier has more potential than this tier, or this tier could bring us something in a trade, but they really haven't put it together yet. So it varies from each of us. So, I mean, we've never really sat down and said, it's just kind of organically evolved into little tiers that we've done.
All right, so let's start getting into the weeds here. Let's start digging in. If anyone has any questions, they can ask them in the comments section. But I'm going to go, Greg. I'm going to go with you first because one of your picks that I saw kind of jump up high at number 5, I think you had him higher than most, was Jefferson Rojas, 18-year-old shortstop. I got to see him at Myrtle Beach. What is it that Cub fans should really get excited about when it comes to Jefferson?
Yeah, I think that it was fun that Jefferson Rojas kind of jumped onto the map last year, almost out of nowhere. I think that very few of us were expecting. I don't want to speak for you guys entirely, but like I think none of us were expecting that type of breakout from Jefferson Rojas in 2023. He's a guy who performed super well offensively in Myrtle Beach, which is a tough place to hit down there in that ballpark, down there in that league. And so the fact that he was able to do what he did last year, and he did it at 18 years old, and he did it as a shortstop. He was a shortstop in Myrtle Beach over Christian Hernandez, which was kind of going into the season. We expected Christian to kind of run away with that position, run away with being a stud. So seeing Jefferson Rojas, and part of it too with Jefferson is like he just kind of looks the part. In addition to putting up numbers and putting up results, like he doesn't look like an 18-year-old playing full season ball. He looks like a grown man playing the game. And that's fun to watch with Jefferson Rojas. So I'm really excited to see him at age 19 playing South Bend next year because I think it's only but up for Jefferson Rojas.
Now, Todd, Greg mentioned third base, and as Cub fans right now, it's third base has always been that bugaboo position for the Cubs, right? After Ron Santo, they gave away Bill Madlock, and then we really didn't have anything until Ramos Ramirez.
Yeah.
Chris Bryant was supposed to be the savior, got a World Series, but just not the career we expected. But you had an article recently on Northside Bound talking about third base and how that could be a position of strength for the Cubs. Tell us a little bit about BJ Murray. We saw him in the World Baseball Classic a little bit. We saw him in the Futures game. Where did you have him ranked on your list? And what do you think BJ Murray brings to the team?
Well, I had BJ in my top 14. He was at number 14. And I got to see him up close because in the summer I kind of travel with South Bend up to Appleton, Wisconsin, and the Quad Cities and down to Peoria. And I get to spend a lot of time in batting practice watching him and seeing him do his thing every day. He's very patient. He doesn't get too high, doesn't get too low. He has power from both sides of the plate. And he knows the strike zone forwards and backwards. I mean, doesn't matter what side of the plate he's at. He can see the ball really well with his right eye dominant when he's batting left and with his left eye dominant when he's batting right. He has played a little bit of first, but for the most part last year he played a whole lot of third.
That should, and like I said, he definitely, like I said, fun to watch, and I like the attitude that he brings to the team. Oh, yeah. Rich, I know that, like I said, you and I are running around backfields and having fun in the summertime. One guy that you've been able to watch evolve, and this is the guy that, really when it comes down to the teardown of the Cubs starting in like 21, when the Yu Darvish trade happened, we were just kind of like looking, okay, what prospect in return from the Padres. And the one that really kind of is still surviving, still standing, is Owen Casey. And this spring in the World Baseball Classic, I felt like that was like his coming out party when he was with Team Canada. Really, really put himself on the map there. Owen Casey is, do you see him? I mean, obviously we know the hit tools there, but just like third base has been a problem for the Cubs, first base has been a problem. With Owen Casey, where do you project him? Do you think that the Cubs may start saying, okay, we might have a little bit of need here, and maybe Owen Casey fits that spot?
Yeah. It wouldn't shock me to see that, but I know because I've actually talked to Owen. He has never played first base because I know a lot of fans will throw that out. Oh, we need to put him at first base. Owen's a good athlete. I think the thing that maybe has flown under the radar is how much he improved in right field this past year.
Oh, yeah.
I think he got a lot more work, and his routes were getting better. He's got a cannon for an arm. So I think, could he play first base? Sure. I think he's still a darn good right fielder. And as you mentioned, that bat's going to play. He's one of those guys. He's been fun because he started after he was acquired from the Padres in the trade. He played that next year, pretty much all summer. I think he got called up like in maybe mid-August up to Myrtle Beach, but I got to watch him play in the ACL. And kind of like you guys were mentioning about BJ Murray, his knowledge of the strike zone is so good. It is so impressive. And I think that's another one that has kind of flown under the radar. So he'll take a lot of balls. He'll take his walks. ACL, the umpires are learning too, but there were a number of pitches I saw him got rung up on that he should not have been rung up on. He was getting called out on balls that were being called strikes, but he's one of the guys I am really high on. I think he, especially like this past year with the the ball, the tackle baseball. Ball. Yeah. His strikeout numbers weren't real good in the first half, but they still weren't as bad as they might have been, I think, because the ball was doing some really weird things. And once they got rid of that, his numbers just really skyrocketed.
Now, Greg, you were talking a little bit about the, about his exit velo, for Owen Casey. And for a team like the Chicago Cubs that need some pop, boy, just wherever you could get it. This is a guy that would be fun to watch at Wrigley.
Yeah, the exit velos are some of the best they would be some of the best in all of Major League Baseball, not only minor league baseball. So he hits the ball really, really hard. He's gotten better every year at pulling the ball in the air, I thought he's really always been really good about hitting the left center gap, going the opposite way during his time at the lower levels of the system. And I think he's gotten even better at pulling the baseball in the air. And I mean, when you're doing that and hitting the ball consistently in the above 110 miles an hour, like that'll play, So that exit velo, and that's the best predictor of a guy ultimately having power, home run power at the major league level. And Owen Casey does it better than anybody in this organization. Does it better than almost anybody in all of professional baseball. So that's fun.
Now, Todd, one guy that you have high on your list is a guy that you probably saw. You said you were traveling a lot around with South Bend.
Mhm.
Kevin Alcantara. When I look at
yeah.
Kevin Alcantara, he El Jaguar. I mean, when you take a look at a guy like when you look at him, you just say ball player. There's no doubt that he is some freak athlete. What was it that you enjoyed watching with Kevin Alcantara this year?
Well, one, he has a great personality. But when Canario came back from his rehab out in Arizona from his broken ankle and shoulder and was beginning to play full season ball, he just soaked up everything that Canario said for the 10 days or whatever he was there. And he began taking off after that. But I really enjoy watching him play defense. I mean, he played mostly center field last year, and he can just go get a baseball. I mean, there is no doubt that at 6'6", it doesn't take him long. I mean, I saw PCA get to some balls the summer before that he had no business getting to, and cutting off triples and doubles. And Alcantara has that same kind of talent as far as getting to balls deep in the outfield and left center and right center. And he, I think, really started to tick up in the middle of the year after working with Canario there for a while. And we started to see the bat come alive. And Rich can attest to how he did out in Arizona in the fall league. We saw a lot of power, and he finished strong. So I'm really excited with everything that he can do. I mean, the only concern is that he is 6'6", and he does have a lot of long levers. But he seems to have a pretty good knowledge of the strike zone, and he developed a lot more patience as the year went on.
And Greg, it's funny because when you were talking about, sometimes that, being so long-limbed, Alcantara has some trouble with the sliders, with those biting sliders. I always said the best comp to me when I look at Alcantara always is Alfonso Soriano. Like, he just reminds me in so many ways of just like an athlete, that wiry build, just everything going on. I don't know. It's a question of whether he can put it all together in the major leagues.
Yeah, I've heard like the absolute peak comp for like I dislike player comps typically, just because like you're putting unreasonable expectations on a player. But in terms of like the type of player that he could ultimately be, I think that I've heard Matt Kemp thrown around, and obviously like Matt Kemp was a MVP candidate and was terrific for many years. And so like if Kevin Alcantara could put together a career like Matt Kemp, then like that's the dream, So I don't want to put those expectations, but in terms of like that ability to play center field, to be a big bodied guy, show off some power, have some speed. Matt Kemp was out there stealing 40 bases in a season at one point in his career. And Kevin Alcantara is not doing that. He can cover ground in the outfield. He's not going to go out there and steal you 40 bases though. But yeah, it's a profile you can absolutely dream on. He's still got some things to work out in terms of like chasing the slider, and like Todd mentioned, the fastballs in are always going to be a concern, like they were with Chris Bryant for his time with the Cubs, right? It's like when you got to do that 6'6", fastballs in on the hands are tough. Now Alcantara obviously does have very quick hands. That's where the power comes from. But it's just a different animal when you're getting 98 in on you as opposed to 94 in on you,
Yeah, absolutely. And, one of the things that I think it was both Todd and Rich, both of you guys had Matt Shaw, I believe, at number 3.
Mhm.
And it was unbelievable, Rich, how quick. I mean, you saw when he first showed up to the complex. And then before long, I know he's a college player, but going all the way up to Double-A and playing in the championship. I mean, that's just unreal.
Yeah, I saw him in the complex, but I didn't get to see him play. I happened to be while I was traveling to some of the affiliates, but I was fortunate then by the time I got to South Bend, he was in South Bend. Him and Josh Rivera were both there. And I only got to see him play one night, but I did come away impressed. He played short that night, but looked good at the arm. Watching him on MILB.com at the plate, just didn't seem overmatched. And the attitude, I think, is the other thing that I was really impressed by with Matt. He very humble, very coachable from what I saw. I saw him working a lot with several of the coaches working on his fielding early on. I think he even talked about in his opening press conference about wanting to find that spot where he struggled, because that's where he's going to learn. So, I'm very excited about what Matt Shaw can do.
So, Rich, I'm going to ask you first, and then, guys, you can absolutely jump in on this. Whenever, whether it's Twitter or Facebook or wherever we may be, every time, someone says we need a third baseman, people are like, well, we got Matt Shaw can play there. Does his arm, do you think he will be able to play third base, or does that seem kind of a stretch right now, Rich? What's your opinion on that right now?
I never got a chance to really see him take grounders over there, so I haven't really seen him flash the arm. I saw him a little bit at shortstop. Arm looked good there. I think, to me, I'm going to go back to like Nick Madrigal. A year ago this time when it started kind of leaking out, I think it was at the Cubs convention last year where it kind of started talking about Nick Madrigal playing third. And there were some people making the smart aleck remarks. He's going to have a cutoff man on the pitcher's mound because he's not going to be able to make it. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. You're real funny, buddy. While you're sitting on your mom's couch in the basement. But Nick played pretty decent third base. Is it, it's not a Javi Baez arm, but I don't know yet. But if Nick Madrigal can do it, I got to think Matt Shaw is going to at least get a shot. Working with the coaches, wouldn't surprise me to see him out there early this spring. A lot of guys will probably be showing up at the complex in January, because that's usually right after the first of the year. You start seeing some guys start to trickle in, and that's when I started seeing Nick, and he was working at third base every day.
Yeah, I think my take on the Matt Shaw third base situation is he's a good athlete. We know he's a good athlete. So he's been a shortstop in college. It's all right, so yeah, maybe he can play some third base. I'm not saying that. Well, I don't even think that we see my take on when we potentially see Matt Shaw in Chicago is I would love to see him in September. If we see him in September, then I think that's terrific. I don't know how you guys feel, but anything before that seems ridiculous, in the best way possible, right? If we see him before September, it's holy crap, this kid is truly amazing. But my take on it is all right, if I don't think he'll play a bad third base. Do I think he'll play a great third base? Absolutely not. Could he potentially get there? Yeah, maybe. We know he was a shortstop in college. We know he's a good athlete, and you just kind of roll with that. So then maybe he can play third base.
Now, Todd, it's funny because I remember the draft a couple of years back. There was a lot of hitters that people were kind of hoping the Cubs would go after, and instead they went with Cade Horton, and people, what? He was injured. He barely played. And now you got him on the top of your rankings, and so do a lot of people have him as one of the Cubs' top prospects. What made you put Cade Horton at number 1 on your list?
I think just his future value for me. I think we're really only starting to see what he can do as a pitcher because of the things you just mentioned. He really hadn't pitched a lot in college. Last year was the first full year that he pitched full time. Because he started out as a two-way player in college. And what we saw last year was he just dominated at Myrtle Beach. I mean, it was ridiculous. And then he came to South Bend, and he pitched really well, had some struggles, a couple of games. But he was in Tennessee the last third of the year, and he really put some starts together where he was just flat out dominant, and then he picked it up in the playoffs, and we really haven't seen a pitching prospect like him since number 22 back in 2003. So, I mean, his future value as a guy at the top of the rotation, I think for me, got him a little bit higher than Pete, but not much. Pete is a great player, and Pete's going to be an everyday center fielder for somebody, hopefully the Cubs. But Pete has his limitations, and I don't think we know what Cade Horton's ceiling is going to be just yet. I mean, he's got 3 great pitches. I don't know if there's a 4th one in his repertoire or a tweak on one he already has, but I think we're just going to start to see what he can really do as a pitcher, because to be honest, the Cubs were still limiting his innings through May and June last year before they let him go in July and August and September. So he really hasn't pitched more than 80, 85 throws in a game yet. I mean, maybe 90 a couple of times, but we're just starting to see what he can do. And I think that is, to me, is what is most exciting about him as the Cubs' top prospect.
And you talked about limits to PCA's game. What do you think those limits are?
I think his aggressive nature at the plate is what makes him, and you don't want to tamper that, really. I think you don't want to like keep Pete down, but he's not going to be a guy who's going to hit 320, 330. He's going to go in the 280s, maybe 260 to 280. But he's really developing some power. So, I mean, it wouldn't surprise me to see him hit in 2 or 3 years, 25 home runs in the majors, steal you 40 bases, get a Gold Glove in center fielder. I mean, that's a good problem to have, is to have a top rotation pitcher and then that guy backing him up in center field. So
PCA is not your father's leadoff man, right? Like I think that a lot of people have that in mind, where they're like, oh, like he's like the speedy center fielder, contact oriented leadoff batter that like from 20, 30, 40 years ago. Like that's not what PCA is, you know?
Oh.
He's going to jump on that early mistake.
Yeah.
You know, the thing I saw when I saw PCA playing with the Cubs, that I think really kind of, you know, when you see him playing, I saw him in South Bend play before. And the thing that blew my mind is I think sometimes the guys on the team, Ian Happ and Seiya, were shocked that he was on so many plays, like right behind him, like how quick he comes to the ball. It's probably going to take some time for people to get used to it. And I mean, if I'm Seiya, I just put my hands up and say, go get him, kid, you know?
Yeah. He when I was at saw him with South Bend in 2022, he'd be out in the outfield shagging BP every day, catching balls behind his head. I mean, it's like he would try it every time and make it look like it was nothing. And so for him to go up to the majors and flash that defensive thing is unreal, because I don't think I've ever seen anybody be able to judge the arc of a ball and its trajectory better than him. And there's just nobody.
Now, Rich, on your list at 6 and 7, you have Jordan Wicks at 6 and Ben Brown at 7. Wicks got a little cup of coffee at the end of the year. It looked like he did well. And Ben Brown was probably the guy that was going to get that spot if he didn't get injured. What do you see with those two guys as far as which one would you anticipate maybe, having a start first between the two of those guys?
I think right now, if I had to guess, I'd probably go Jordan, just because he's got a little bit more of the experience up there. I think one of the things I love about Jordan is the word bulldog is what automatically comes to mind with him. His first start was such a great example where, he gave up a couple runs, and then Tommy Honaby came out, talked to him, boom, he shut it down from there. And that's just, it's fun. He's a fun guy to talk to because, off the field, great guy. When he's on that mound, he kind of reminds me a little of the John Lester kind of thing, where you're not going to beat him. He's just so focused and he's going to get there. I think Ben is probably a little bit more laid back with his, but he's got tremendous talent. As you said, I think he probably was on track to get called up if he didn't have some injury issues, and then that kind of set him back in. I think it was in August, July or August, that time frame. But again, I think that's a great problem to have with those two guys. Plus, I think he's not considered really a prospect anymore. But with Javier Assad, it's great kind of seeing now more and more pitchers that are going to be able to come up and make an impact on the staff.
Now, Greg, when we talk about we don't want to trade any guys, I mean, you have two corner outfielders that potentially, they're there for the next couple of years. And to me, it seems like a lot of these guys are going to be knocking on the door. You're going to have to worry about Rule 5, coming real soon. And so when you think about this, you got Alexander Canario. We talked about Kevin Alcantara, Owen Casey, all of these guys. I mean, it's kind of like it's a good problem to have. But as far as outfielders, I mean, Canario, I was just so impressed. But I think we were frustrated that he didn't get a chance to really show what he had. Very similar to Nelson Velasquez. You know what I mean? It's like, for some reason, they decided to put Patrick Wisdom in right field and Miles Mastroboni in right field. And we're like, well, what about that Nelson Velasquez kids? He's ripping up AAA. What I guess, do you see Canario potentially getting more starts? And do you see Craig Counsell being a manager that would maybe roll the dice a little bit more with young guys more than David Ross?
Yeah, I think that I trust Counsell to find a way to ease those guys into the lineup a little bit better. Honestly, like specifically about Canario, like I'd love to see the Cubs. I mean, assuming they don't go out and get Bellinger or get somebody to permanently, like to fill that center field role, I'd love for Canario and Mike Tauchman to kind of do a platoon type of deal in center field to start off the year. I think that Canario is not a center fielder long term, but can he go out there and platoon with Tauchman right now in center field? Yeah, I think you could do that. Overall, I think that it is so tough for managers, for guys in the front office, and for players to figure out how to jump from AAA to the major leagues, get the right amount of playing time, plus continue to develop, plus continue to get wins at the major league level. Like that balance, like that is not something, like I am not envious of anybody who makes those decisions. I'm not envious of the players that have to deal with that situation. Like that's just so tough. I'll push back a little bit on anybody that's like, we need to start trading guys now for sure. Like if we're trading Alcantara or Owen Casey or whoever for major league talent, because like that's what makes a major league team better right now. Like, yeah, I'm all for that, but I don't think they should trade them just because, there's too many of them right now. Like I don't really care that Ian Happ and Seiya Suzuki and there's PCA and Canario and Owen Casey and Kevin Alcantara. I don't care about that right now. Like it's you deal with that once it becomes an actual issue. And right now that's not an actual issue. You know what I mean? So like, yeah, do I expect all 7 guys to be in the lineup on a daily basis? You can't possibly have that. But again, that's not an issue right this very second.
And Rich, I'm looking at Matt and Hannah Triolo. They're agreeing with you. I think John Lackey kind of personality, I think, is what they meant on that one as far as the Bulldog is concerned. But Todd, I got to ask you, the name that everybody was talking about this time last year was Matt Mervis. Mm-hmm. And he's kind of all of a sudden not really being talked about a lot. What are the concerns with Matt Mervis, and do you see him getting another crack at first base spring training?
I think he's going to play quite a bit in spring training. And that's going to determine a little bit. But what's really going to help him is some fresh eyes from Counsell. I think it's great that we brought in somebody that's not been in the organization to look at some of these prospects and go, that guy right there, that's the one I want. I want that guy. I want to try Canario out in center, or I want to try Matt Mervis at DH. So he's going to bring some fresh eyes to look at the talent and evaluate it. But I think Mervis did do well when he went back down. We've got a post coming out, I think it's next week, on first baseman, and he's still the top guy in the system, although Hayden McGeary's kind of closing the gap there. But he's went back to Iowa, held his head up, worked hard, hit really well. And, in just a limited amount of time, he still had almost 80 RBIs in just a little over 300 at-bats at Iowa. So the potential is still there. He's 20. I think he's 25 now. So he's still kind of young. But I think if somebody gives him the opportunity, and like some guys, it's hard to overcome a bad start. And that becomes kind of the narrative, and it's hard to get rid of that. So hopefully if he gets another chance, he can get off the schneid early and get to it.
Now, Rich, one of our favorite guys that came up here to Club 400 for the Christmas party last year, again, it's so crazy when you think about it. Braylon Marquez is now with Houston. So that's gone. And Brendan Davis was one of the top guys, and injuries have absolutely kind of stumbled his, with the start of his career. But then you take a look at Miguel Amaya and saw what he got to do this year with the Cubs. And, I know Greg was talking about 6 outfielders we were talking about, but nobody mentioned Brennan. It's obviously, you have the Amaya story of him being successful in overcoming injuries to get to the majors. And we have the Braylon Marquez where it didn't work out. Go try it somewhere else, kid. How important is this year going to be for Brennan Davis?
I think this is huge. I think it's kind of a make or break year for Brennan. But I think the thing is, Brennan's another one. Great work ethic. It's easy to forget that what was it, 2 years ago? He was the Futures Game MVP, and he's still fairly young because he was a high school draft pick. And I'm hoping for him. I think I didn't rank him this year just because he hasn't been able to be on the field. But that talent is still there. If he can get past the health issues, I mean, as somebody who's had some back problems before, man, that impacts everything you do on the field. Try and take a swing with a bad back, and you're gonna feel, stabbing pain. It's kind of hard to hang in there on a 3-2 curveball on the outside corner. So I'm hopeful for Brennan because, like I say, he's a great guy. And you met him at Club 400, so I'm sure you can attest to that as well. So I'm really hoping for him.
Now, Greg, I was a little nervous. I'm going to tell you why. Because they fired David Ross right after they announced that John May-Lee was coming back to the staff. And I'm going, oh, my God. I was so excited for John. Again, another good friend of Club 400 that we know very well. And, I just somebody that I've gotten to see over the years. He would run a baseball clinic up here and for hitting and have hitting coaches and talk to them. And I was just a fly on the wall to those conversations. But just the way that John teaches, not just players, but other coaches that are maybe, younger in the ranks. I'm so excited that John is going to be with the big league club this year. And the fact that he got to work with a lot of these guys in AAA, it's going to give them a familiar face, a friendly face, somebody they work with. How big of a difference do you think that's going to be for some of these guys like Alexander Canario, like PCA?
Yeah, I think it might ease that transition a little bit into the major league level, which is awesome. And I know that he made a huge impact working with the AAA Iowa hitters last year. Those guys seemed to love working with him. The offense was tremendous last year for Iowa. I mean, like if you recall, like the first, 2 months of the year, the offense was like something I've never seen before. Like they were consistently putting up double-digit runs down there in Iowa. And so he did wonders with that team in AAA. I don't doubt for a second that he'll have a big impact on the players that are currently in Chicago and the guys that are going to be jumping up there, whether it's PCA or Canario or Matt Mervis or anybody. I think that he'll have a big impact on anybody up there.
Now, Matt and Hannah Triallo have another question for you here. Does a dark horse like Luis Vasquez surprise the front office in spring training? What do you guys want to take that one?
I'll kick it to Todd for that one. He had the highest rank, right? You had Vasquez at 11.
Yeah, he's defensively, he's ready. My only thought is, are they going to try him at third? Because that's really the only place they could play him, considering you have 2 Gold Glovers in the middle of the diamond. He's been a fun watch. I mean, as early as Arizona and Eugene, the great Eugene Emeralds, he's always flashed a glove, and he just dominates out there. I mean, he is on the prowl for every baseball that he can get to, and it's so effortless to watch him play defense. Out of all the prospects in the Cub system, he could easily transition to third, but is his bat going to play? And can the Cubs afford to develop his bat at the major league level just to have his premium defense? And that's really what they need to figure out in the next 4 months.
I
we have
mentioned.
another.
I'm sorry.
Oh,
I'm
go
sorry.
ahead.
I was gonna say about Vasquez. I mentioned I went on live on Northside Bound on what, Sunday night and or Monday night, and with Vasquez, if you're playing him at third base because of that defense is so good, that's fine. But like third base is often one of those positions where you're getting a lot of offensive value. It's third base, it's first base, it's the corner infield, the corner outfield, and so like if you're not getting and you won't, like if you're playing Vasquez at third base this year, he's not going to provide plus offensive value for you at third base. And so if you're losing that at third base, you have to pick it up at a position where you don't typically get that really good offensive production. So if you're not getting it at third base, then Nico has to absolutely go off, or you have to get a center fielder that is a 125 WRC plus type guy. You know what I mean? So you have to trade off that offensive value somewhere else if you have Luis Vasquez and his great glove, his great defensive glove at third base, but you're just not getting offensive value there.
All right, we got another question here. This is from S.E. Brockhouse. Do you guys still think Alzolay gets another opportunity as closer, or do Cubs grab someone with some years as closer, maybe like a Josh Hader? But, thinking about prospects, is there anyone in the system that you say this guy's got a closer mentality, Rich, when you kind of look at some of these guys?
Someone who kind of comes to mind, but he had some injuries last year. But I'm a big Zach Lee guy. He played down in Tennessee, but he got a late start. Like I say, I can't remember if it was shoulder. I believe it was shoulder, but I'm not positive on that. But he's kind of one of those guys who he has a short memory and comes in and just deals. And another one but he's further away, and he's probably much more of a question mark because of the injuries. But man, Ben Leeper, I love that guy. Had to have his third Tommy John, but before that, yeah. But he's a guy I would not bet against. I think he's about a month ahead of schedule. I talked to him a few weeks ago, and based on his stuff. So I mean, he's got a long road. Would be probably late this year, if at all. But man, he's got the mentality for it.
Now, a question I have, and I saw this kid in Myrtle Beach when I went there, and all of a sudden it's just boom, boom, pop, pop, pop of the mitt was Michael Arias. And I was like, who is this kid? And to me, I don't know if he's going to be able, to be a starter. You never know. But boy, I just said to myself, that looks like it's got closer all over it. Todd, you're kind of nodding your head a little bit. What do you think about Michael Arias?
Well, I'd only seen him on video, like when you saw him at Myrtle Beach. And I was he debuted in South Bend and Beloit. And I was in the dugout the first couple innings taking pictures. And everybody was on the front rail just watching him because it's just vicious. I mean, if you sit behind the plate and watch his pitches move and the swings he gets for the first couple innings, it's great. I mean, the big concern with him is he's not very big. He's maybe 165, 70 pounds, soaking wet. So if he can add 10, 15 pounds of muscle, get up to 180, 185, I don't know if that's going to be enough to be a starter, but I think in terms of pure stuff, he's right there at the top of the system. And I kind of think long-term, or now that he's on the 40-man, maybe let's put him in the pen, get him through the system, get him to Chicago, let's bring him out of the pen. And if we need to develop him as a starter down the road, we can do that. But that arm, I tell you what, that slider is just freaking nasty.
Like I said, there's something about the pop of the mitt. And I was right behind home plate, and I was just like, I wasn't expecting that at all. And the other guy that was receiving him that impressed me was Moises Ballesteros. Just for his age, he just seemed to just command everything. Like he just was, you just knew he just looked like the captain on the field out there. It was so impressive. We have a question here, Greg, if you want to tackle this one from Tom Cooper about how far away would you say Owen Casey is from making the bigs?
I always say that once a 40-man rostered guy or a top prospect, which Owen's a top prospect, makes their way to Tennessee, then they're just a call away at that point. That's what I always like to say. And obviously, he spent his entire year last year in Tennessee. Owen will spend he'll start off the year surely in Iowa to start off 2024, and so he's a hot stretch away. I've still kind of got like internally, I'm thinking of Owen Casey being a early season 2025 guy. Like, let's let him ride it out in Iowa in 2024, see what he can do, and start off the 2025 campaign as your starting right fielder or your starting DH or whatever you want, wherever you want to put him. But have him in Chicago at that point. But like I said, with the caveat that like when you're in AAA and a top prospect, like you really are just a hot stretch away.
Now, here's one that I want to kind of ask each of you, and I'm going to take these guys off the table. I'm going to take PCA, I'm going to take Owen Casey, and I'm going to take Cade Horton off the table. I know nobody's untradeable for the right deal, but if there was one guy you said, I just really do not want to see the Cubs part with this person, Todd, who do you got for that one?
Oh, that's a tough call. I mean, I'm ideally right now you look at Matt Shaw, but you also kind of got to look at some of the young guys the Cubs have, like Jackson Ferris. I think for me, we really haven't had a guy like this, a big prep left-handed pitcher who other teams covet. I mean, if you have left-handed pitching, you got a lot. I know it sounds strange and simple, but it really is. I mean, he and Drew Gray are going to be something else at high A this year, but they're just beginning to develop. They're just beginning to have the chains taken off of them as far as pitch counts and innings limits. But either one of those two guys, I think I would have a really hard time parting with those two prep pitchers right there.
Greg, what do you think?
Yeah, I think the easy answer would just be like go down my prospect list after PCA and Cade. So it'd be Alcantara or Owen Casey or Rojas or Shaw, whatever it might be. But I think that I'll kind of piggyback off what Todd had to say. And I think when you're looking at a guy like Jefferson Rojas and Jackson Ferris, those are guys that I think that's because they're so young, like you don't know exactly what you have in them yet. And so I think if you're trading them, like with Matt Shaw, even though he was just drafted last year, I think you have a better idea of what Matt Shaw is long term. The same could be said about Owen Casey and Kevin Alcantara, just because they've been around a little bit longer. Like they know, like the deal with them better. With Jefferson Rojas and Jackson Ferris, it's like what could these guys be? And it feels like a team that you're trading with would not value them as much as the Cubs value them.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And that's the whole point of making trades, is that you want another team to value your player more than you do, because they'll give you more in return. That's how it works. And with Rojas and Ferris, I don't see how that could possibly be the case, considering how young they are and how little teams have probably scouted them as pros.
Rich, you've had the unfair advantage of being able to think about this. What does your sage wisdom say?
So I think I'm gonna throw out one of the names that Todd threw out. I'm a big Drew Gray fan. I got to see Drew make his first start in the ACL a couple of years ago, and I walked away super impressed, thinking he was a college draftee, and then I found out later he was a high school draftee. So that told me something. So of course, then he had to have Tommy John, so he missed most of the 2022 season, and then came back last year. But I don't know, just again a big lefty who I think he's one of my guys that I think really might take a huge step forward in 24 as the ropes come off and he's able to go deeper into games, throw more pitches. I'm very optimistic about Drew Gray.
Now I got to tell you something. In the offseason, when I saw Craig Breslow go to Boston, and I yelled no, and then the next thing I see is Dan Kantrovitz maybe to the Mets, and I'm like literally freaking out. I mean, look, we all want Dan to be successful and do whatever his heart wants, man. But I got to tell you, I'm kind of really happy that he's still in the organization. To lose a guy of Dan's intellect and everything that Dan does. I mean, I feel like, I don't know about you guys, but I feel like the core minor league system may not have as much top tier talent as it did in 2013, 2014, 2015, but what they might not have in top tier, boy, do they really have in depth. I mean, and seeing that group that's been going up together, winning championships, South Bend and now Tennessee, and God only knows what AAA is going to look like. I mean, you want to talk about Des Moines and the city buzzing? It's going to be out of control. Greg, how many trips do you plan to Iowa, man?
I'm gonna have to plan some trips to Iowa for sure, where the city's definitely buzzing.
Todd, any thoughts on Dan Kantrovitz and still being, one of the guys that's going to be helping the Cubs with this next draft?
Oh yeah, I don't think he's going anywhere this year. I still think he's still finding his way in terms of trying to figure out just exactly how much depth to have at certain positions, because right now there's kind of a dearth of left-handed pitching beyond Drew Gray and Ferris and Wicks and the relievers. But the Cubs have also shown that they can go out and find some minor league guys to fill those holes. But I think he's really shown that he is a true believer in the best guy available on days 1 and 2 in rounds 1 through 10. And he can go get a Zaire Hope in the 11th round. I think he's in my top 20. And I think everybody else got him on the list, and he's going to be at Myrtle Beach this year. Maybe you can get to see him when you go there. And
I might have to make another trip back.
Yeah, but to get him this year, I think was a steal. To get Will Sanders in the 5th round, I mean, he's going to be like a workhorse as a college pitcher. And so, he made a lot of good picks this last year, and I'm pretty sure he's going to have some nice picks to make, because they're going to have 4 picks in the top 80 this summer.
I can't tell you how confident I am in the Cubs, whether it's Dan Kantrovitz on draft day or the rest of the development staff throughout their time as pros, in drafting and developing college arms. Like right now, I feel really confident in their ability to do that. Whether it's going out and drafting Jordan Wicks or Cade Horton and getting some top into the rotation rotation guys, or guys that are just act as depth in the Cubs organization, the Brandon Birdsell, the Connor Noland, even the Nick Hull and guys like that. I feel really confident in the players they're targeting in the draft, and then how they can turn that into success as a professional. And like, that's why I have come around to the idea of that, like the Jackson Wiggins pick last year and drafting that college arm. I have a lot of confidence in this development staff to do that.
I was talking with the broadcaster of the Myrtle Beach Pelicans, Sam Wiederhoff. He just got he was renewed. His contract was renewed. And he told me, I was telling him I was talking to you guys, and he said, hey, mention Zaire Hope for me. So I'm glad you did that, Todd. One thing I do want to say, and I don't know if you guys know, are as frustrated as I am about this. At Cubs convention, it looks like they're not going to be doing the prospect session. Yeah. And for those people that are Cubs Con junkies like me, it was always the best on Sunday, the down on the farm session. And then last year they moved it to prime time because of all the young talent. And then this year they scrapped it. I just really think it does a disservice, because for those young guys, what a chance to be introduced to Chicago. Yeah. And what a chance, like I said, on a Sunday, when most people are going home and there's guys like us hanging out and listening to them. I think that's a shame that they're losing that, Rich. You know that from talking to these guys, how much they enjoyed going to Cubs convention.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. For a lot of those guys, it's their first exposure to, crowds of those size. And, I think a lot of them come away shocked that people know who they are. So I didn't even realize that they were scrapping that one. So yeah, that is kind of disappointing. But I have a feeling though.
I have a feeling Rich has a really brilliant thought. He's just frozen right now. So if he comes back, we'll get to his thought. But guys, I just really want to thank you so much for jumping on. I promised Greg I would get him out by 7:45, and we're a little bit over that. But Northside Bound is really you guys have created an environment where people can learn about prospects, and you guys do the hard homework, so guys like me can kind of look up there and look somewhat smart. You said you had some articles coming out next week, Todd. What were you talking specifically about?
Well, every Monday this offseason, we break down each position in the system. So far, we've done second base, third base, and left-handed relievers. And I think right-handed relievers or first base is next week. And then Greg has on deck, Cubs on deck every Tuesday. And then Wednesday, we have some breakout guys. Zumac and I start looking at the draft tomorrow. So that's exciting. And then every Friday, we're doing a little position group for each affiliate. So this week, it's going to be the Tennessee infield, where we talk about who could be playing there.
What is up with Zumac thinking he can go on a vacation rather than join our call? I think he should have tried to get on here. And Rich, you just had a great article come out, and you know, Rich, I love your special interest pieces because I know how the close relationship you have with a lot of those guys. But you had 24 prospects share their favorite moment of the 2023 season, and I thought that was just a great piece to be able to read that.
Thank you, appreciate it. Honestly, I did one similar to that like last year around the Christmas holiday, and it's probably one of the most fun things I do during the year, because I think there's a lot of things you'd expect, like a lot of the guys talked about the Tennessee championship or getting into the playoffs or being drafted, but there's a lot of cool things that you would never expect, like Max Bain talking about being there to support guys who'd been injured and throwing their first session off the mound, just being a good teammate, that kind of thing. So I think it just gives a real human flavor to a lot of those guys that people don't get to see in the telecasts or just reading Twitter about them.
Well, guys, again, I appreciate you jumping on here. Northsidebound.com is where you'll find their great work. Todd Johnson, Greg Huss, Rich Biesterfeld, and Greg Zumac in absentia. I hope to see you guys. If you're not coming out to CubsCon, Rich, I'm going to definitely see you in Arizona.
Absolutely.
Todd, I hope to see you on the road somewhere in South Bend and get together and have a beer, boys.
All right. Thanks for having us.
Appreciate it, Crawly.
Thanks, Crawly.
Thank you.
All right, Crawly, great job with that interview. I know you want to take a moment to thank the listeners.
Yeah, absolutely. Before we do that, though, we also want to thank our friends over at the South Bend Cubs and give them a congratulations. They were awarded this year's Bob Freitas Award, which recognizes long-term business success, community involvement, and operational excellence. They beat out 60 high A and low A teams. So, they've been so good to us. They treated us great, whether it's Chris Hagstrom or Max and BK. All those guys, they've always made us feel welcome whenever we show up to the ballpark. So a big shout out. They just put on such a great production.
Nice job. Congratulations, South Bend.
And guys, this podcast is nothing without the listeners. You guys are the ones that have made this a really great year for the Fly the W podcast. We wanted to take a minute to wish you and yours a very happy holidays, Merry Christmas, all the fun things. And hopefully when we come back, we'll have plenty of news to talk about once these holidays are over and we get ready for free agency to really take off.
Absolutely, Crawly. I'll echo those sentiments. Thank you for listening. Thanks for downloading. Thanks for reviewing. Look forward to seeing a bunch of you guys out at CubsCon as well.
Oh, we got plenty more to go. Go Cubs! Hey guys, it's Crawly. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more content like this. If you want to see more of our videos, be sure to check out our playlist and let us know what you think in the comments below. Also, don't forget to follow us on social media to stay up to date with our latest episodes. Links are in the description. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you in the next video. Go Cubs!